Hey, what's good, everybody? I'd like to welcome you all to a brand new episode of the Boombox Guru. I'm your host, LB, and for today's episode, I am doing a sequel to my previous video, Top 5 80s Prince albums. This time, I'm talking about the Top 5 90s Prince albums. I'm really excited to do this video because the 90s is actually probably one of my favorite eras of Prince, and I think it's one of the eras in Prince's career that has been slightly underrated, in my opinion, man. A lot of people seem to think that Prince lost it in the 90s, that he wasn't really putting out that good as much good music as he did in the 80s, when in reality he was actually putting out a lot of good music. It's just that the whole highly publicized dispute that he was having with Warner Brothers overshadowed a lot of the good records that he was putting out during that period. So I wanted to discuss my top 5 albums from that era and bring even some often overlooked and underappreciated albums in my top 5 to light. So without further ado, let's get this started. The first album I want to talk about is probably not one that's necessarily underrated, but I think it's one that doesn't really get talked about as much as the next album after that. Excuse me, and that would be Graffiti Bridge, released in 1990. And this was actually a soundtrack album to the movie of the same name, which came out that year. The movie honestly did not get very good reviews. I think it's only been recently that the reception for it has grown, but the soundtrack and this particular album has always gotten positive reviews from critics. The critics really enjoyed this record and called it one of his best records in a long time up until that point. But released in 1990, this record had a very eclectic mix of different styles. You got funk, of course, you got rock, you got pop, you got some soul and R&B elements, as well as gospel. And a star-studded guest list of features on here, man. George Clinton makes an appearance. Recently reunited the Time with Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis is on this record. Mavis Staples is on here. Tevin Campbell, who made one of his first big appearances on record, he's on here. Who else? Alyssa Fiorillo, she's on here. Just so many great artists and performances on this record, and a lot of the songs on this album, particularly the ones that Prince performed on, a lot of these songs were actually recorded during different periods in the 1980s. I believe Thieves in the Temple was the only song on this album that was recorded in 1990. Everything else, as far as Prince is concerned, were like revamped versions of older songs that he had done in the 80s. The song New Power Generation is actually an updated version of a song called Bold Generation from the 1999 sessions. I think Can't Stop This Feeling I Got. I think that was a song that might have been recorded during the Controversy sessions. Let's see here. Weekend Funk was recorded during the Purple Rain era, somewhere around that period, which was, at the time, it was known as Weekend FUCK. And if you have the Super Deluxe of Purple Rain, that song is included with that, as well as the Bold Generation. That's on the 1999 Super Deluxe. Joy and Repetition was recorded during the Dream Factory recording sessions with the Revolution. Of course, that album got shelved after Prince disbanded the Revolution, but that's the only song from the prior years that was left in its original form. Prince did not touch that record. He did not revamp it or update it by any means. This is the original 1986 version. And so many other great tracks. Thieves in the Temple was a number one hit, which something Prince really had a knack for at this time. Anytime he had an album or a single come out that was associated with a major movie, it usually ended up being like a number one hit. When Doves Cry, Kiss, The Bat Dance, and Thieves in the Temple just followed that whole trajectory. What I'm saying, having a number one hit accompanied with an album. But so many great songs on here, man. The Time with Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis is back in the fold. They got a lot of great songs on here. My personal favorite is Shake. Really dig that song. The way they blended the early 1950s rock and roll style with the Minneapolis sound, that was classic. Tick Tick Bang, which is a solo Prince number, one of my favorite songs from him. One of his most sexually explicit songs as well. I like the way he sampled that Jimi Hendrix beat. Just a great song, man, all around. Him and Levi Caesar Jr., who was a member of the New Power Generation, they did a great job on producing this record, man. But yeah, one of my all-time favorite Prince albums in general, man. And I listen to this album on a regular basis. As a matter of fact, I was listening to it at work today when I was cleaning up, man. So if you've never listened to the album Graffiti Bridge, honestly, I recommend that you go stream it and check it out because it is a true gem in the Prince catalog. All right, so we're gonna skip Diamonds and Pearls, and we're gonna go to the album after that, which you guys know as the Love Symbol album, released in 1992. And this is another one of my all-time favorite Prince albums. I would probably say this is my favorite one of the 1990s, but it's also one of my favorite Prince albums of all time as well. I have I have two versions of this album. I have the one version that my mother bought me a long time ago when I was a kid, and then I have this version, which is the OG pressing, which has the love symbol on the case, on the CD case, as opposed to on the cover. And man, this is a great record right here, man. Most people refer to it as Diamonds and Pearls Part Two because it kind of follows that similar formula. But the difference between this album and Diamonds and Pearls is that Diamonds and Pearls was a more pop oriented record. It was more radio friendly. This record is not. The sound. It has a similar sound, but it's a lot more abrasive. Hence the parental advisory label on here. And it's a concept album that Prince came up with, which is about a princess who falls in love with a rock star, which is Prince, and she gives him these 3 chains of Turin or 3 chains of gold. It's an artifact. It's an ancient artifact that she gives him because there's like these 7 assassins that are coming after her, some way. There's a movie that goes along with this, a short film that Prince did that came out in '94 called 3 Chains of Gold. But in a nutshell, I always thought that the concept is more so metaphorical for Prince falling in love with Maite, because this was the first Prince album where Maite made her debut on. But this is the second album to be credited as Prince and the New Power Generation. And man, they put out a banger of an album. So many great songs on here, man. My Name is Prince, Sexy MF, which was actually a lead single from the record. Of course, it wasn't successful here over in the States, but over in Europe, it was a pretty decent success over there because, they're not as strict about that type of stuff as we are here in the States. Love to the Nines, The Morning Papers, which is one of Prince's best rock songs. The Max, an awesome club banger, has one of my favorite lines from Prince where he says, when they tell me to walk a straight line, I put on crooked shoes. Let's see here. I Want to Melt with You, sort of like a kind of dance, kind of Euro kind of dance type track where it has another really cool line from Prince where he says, don't look now, but there's a river of blood. You must have been a virgin. What am I guilty of? One of the illest lines I've ever heard. The Continental, Damn You, a great Prince ballad, one of my favorites from him. 7, which was probably the biggest hit from this record. Awesome track. I really like the hip hop beat and the acoustic guitars, the whole gypsy vibe of the whole track, and the story behind it. Because that song in a nutshell tells the whole story behind. It sums up the whole concept of the album. 3 Chains of Gold, which is what I call Prince's Bohemian Rhapsody, because it follows that same kind of vibe. But just a great record, and I enjoy this record so much more now that I'm older and I have a better understanding of the concept and the whole story and everything like that, man. But definitely one of his best records, man. If you ever find this in a bookstore, record store, or wherever you get music, definitely pick this record up. It is a true gem in Prince's discography. All right, so now we're going to the year 1994, and we're talking about the album Come, released in '94, man. And yeah, this album is really criminally underrated, man, because this album came out during the peak of the slave era, where his whole dispute with Warner Brothers was widely publicized. And there was a few albums that Prince was kind of throwing out there. He wasn't really getting behind and promoting it, and this was one of them. Come. Yeah, Prince didn't really promote this album that much, and I believe, if I'm correct, this was actually the last album that he released under the name Prince while he was under his contract with Warner Brothers. Hence, you have the little subtitle right there where it says 1958, born 1958, died 1993. Yeah, this was the last Prince album under his contract with Warner Brothers that he released under that name. Everything else that came out, he released under the Love symbol. But "Come" it's one of his sexiest records, man. I mean, very romantic, very sensual, man. I mean, the opening track "Come" is like 11 minutes long, and whoo, you talking about some dirty, nasty lyrics, man. He really Prince really he really goes in on that song. He doesn't hold back. Space is another great one. Pheromone is one of my favorites on this record, which that song was actually inspired by a rendezvous with him and Carmen Electra. Those of you who don't know, Carmen Electra was one of Prince's women back in the day, and that song was inspired by her. Loose, which is a very fast up tempo like trance type song with great guitars. Papa, which is an interesting track. It describes like abuse, and some people have been kind of debating whether Prince was actually talking about his actual childhood or if he was kind of using that as a metaphor for his treatment by Warner Brothers. And some people seem to think it might all kind of intertwine together. Let's see, Race, which was actually, I believe, recorded during the Diamonds and Pearls session. Of course, it's about race. You know, Prince's feelings about how black artists are treated within the music industry. Solo, which is a very minimalist track. It's just a song with Prince using his classic falsetto voice, but he's using it in such an emotional way to really invoke and show the feeling of pain that he's going through while he's in this turmoil with his record label. And then of course Let It Go, which I believe was one of the I believe that was a single from the record. I remember there being a video for it. A really kind of hip hop, is jazzy hip hop type track. Really cool, man. Really cool. Very underrated album. Like I said, a lot of people thought that this was like a subpar album, but it's really good. And on the surface level, you think this album is mainly about sex, but really, Prince was very cryptic and metaphorical in a lot of ways. And a lot of people have pointed out that it's not actually about sex necessarily. This record conveys metaphorically the way he was feeling about the whole situation with Warner Brothers. Like the first half of the album is kind of like him kind of just giving all he's got to Warner Brothers, and then the second half is kind of like him, how he feels afterwards, like he's being used or whatever, so forth. But just a great record in my opinion, and one that I think that should get a lot more recognition for being a really good album, even though he didn't promote it as much. And this album went through several like configurations before it was actually released, because if you do the research, you will see that Come and the next album he did, The Gold Experience, are kind of intertwined as far as like the track listing and the songs. But definitely a classic Prince album, one that I recommend anybody go and check out. And speaking of The Gold Experience, my next in my top 5 90s Prince albums is The Gold Experience. Yeah, released in 1995. Another one of my all-time favorite Prince albums. Prince actually promoted this record quite well. He got behind this record and promoted the heck out of it. It has one of his biggest singles, The Most Beautiful Girl in the World. And although that single was released a year prior to the record, I can't remember quite why that happened. There's plenty of videos on here. There's a channel called Prince's Friend where he does a lot of research and he discusses a lot of that stuff. So definitely check out his channel if you want to know more about it. But anyway, awesome record. And one of the reasons why it's one of my favorites is because I like how Prince took a more rock approach to the sound. There's a lot more rock guitar implemented, and most of you who know me, y'all know that you guys know that I'm a huge fan of when Prince does rock music, because he was just so good at it, and it really showed his guitar virtuosity. It really showed it. It really displayed it, and it's in full force on this record. And you know, one of my favorite Prince songs is on here, Endorphin Machine. That has got to be the heaviest Prince song ever. The heaviest Prince rock song ever. I mean, it's a hard rock track. Borderline heavy metal in some parts, man. Some heavy freaking riffs, man. Some pounding drums. I mean, awesome guitar solos. I mean, Prince's vocal performance, very aggressive, in your face. Awesome track, man. Man, I listen to that song countless times a day through the week, man. That's just how good it is. let's see here. We March, which is a really cool track where Prince talks about racism and oppression. Of course, I mentioned the most beautiful girl in the world, uh, which is one of Prince's best, I guess, kind of ballads. Really, the video was really cool too. How he had all the different types of women. He didn't have like the typical video type women. He had real women in the video. That's like a wedding song in my opinion. The most beautiful girl in the world. That's the kind of song that you would play at a wedding. Like if I was to get married, I would want my wife to walk down the aisle with that song playing. You know what I mean? That's the type of vibe that song really has. Dolphin is another great rock song. Now is a really cool track. It's a hip hop song where Prince raps, and you know Prince wasn't always the greatest rapper, but I would say that on the song now he could probably spit some of his best rhymes on that track. Man, I like that. I like the kind of gritty kind of hip hop vibe that song displays. See 319, a really good up tempo kind of funky pop number, which has Prince talking about him like photographing a sexy model and so forth. Billy Jack Bitch, really hip hop, kind of funky hip hop track. I think that song's a diss track to some journalist that Prince had issues with back then. I Hate You, another great ballad. Man, I really love the guitar solo at the end of that song. And Gold, which is it's got like the semi-title track, man, which has been described as the Purple Rain in the 1990s, because it does have that like inspirational Purple Rain vibe, man. Great ending to the album, a great song overall. And I got to mention P Control, which stands for Pussy Control. I remember when I was a kid, VH1 used to do the VH1 Fashion Rocks or something, and Prince before he opened up the show with that song Pussy Control, because I remember seeing him on the stage performing, and he was holding up panties that said Pussy Control on it. It was crazy. I remember that as a kid. Cause me and my mom was watching it. I remember that. But man, just a great record overall, man. It was. I think it was probably the most successful out of his albums during the slave era. But I think it's still underrated. I don't think a lot of people really recognize how great of an album this is, man. A lot of real diehard fans understand how good this record really is. So I think this album is available for streaming now. It may get a reissue because I know there was a lawsuit pertaining to the song "The Most Beautiful Girl in the World." Some Italian group sued Prince saying that he plagiarized the song, but I think that case has been settled and was in Prince's favor, although posthumously. But it might be up on streaming services now, so definitely check this one out. It's a great record. All right, so now we're down to the last one. I actually switched this one out at the last minute for another one, and so that goes to show you how much I really enjoy this record. But so for my last of my top five, I chose Chaos and Disorder, released in 1996. Now, the thing about this album in particular is that a lot of people looked at this as like being Prince's worst album. And I don't know why, because I think this is an awesome record. This is essentially Prince's rock album. That's why I enjoy this record so much, because he done his most rock music on this record. So much rock guitar is employed on this song. Don't get me wrong, the funk is still on there. There's some hip hop moments on there as well. But man, he definitely employed so much guitar. A lot of bluesy guitar riffs are evident on this record. And he even takes some kind of an alternative grunge approach on a lot of the songs. Particularly, it's got an angsty feel to it because, like I said, this was in the middle of his dispute with Warner Brothers. By this point, he was walking around with "slave" written on his face, and I even heard rumors that when he was recording this album, that he would be in the studio with "slave" written all over his face, like his forehead and cheeks and everything like that. That's what I heard. But man, I really dig this album, man. Chaos in Disorder is one of his heaviest rock songs. I Like It There, which is I think it's about him like coming inside of a woman and getting her pregnant. Dinner with Dolores was a single from the record, which had a diss towards Madonna. The title song Chaos in Disorder actually had a diss towards Rick James as well. I can't really quote the line verbatim right now, but he he kind of takes a shot at Rick James, because at the time we all know the history that Prince and Rick James didn't like each other. But around this time, I think Rick was still in prison, or he had just gotten out. Maybe when Prince recorded the song, he was still locked up. But he takes a shot at him on that song. Let's see here. The Same December is great. So Right the Wrong, a political song, which I think is about Native Americans, them getting their land taken, and how the only way most of them got it back was when they died and stuff like that. Xana Lee is a favorite, man. Favorite of mine. Some more of that Prince, like sexually provocative music. That song is actually about him having a threesome with two women. And it's pretty funny, because Prince mimics a cop that comes to the place where they're having sex, because they're disturbing the peace, and the cop ends up seeing what's going on. He ends up like getting off on it and stuff like that. Let's see here. Into the Light is a great track. I Will is a great one. One of his best kind of like more slower, somber moments. Dig You Better Dead. Oh man, Dig You Better Dead. Funky track, funky up-tempo track. It's crazy. It's kind of prophetic too, how Prince is talking about how a lot of times people only dig you when you dig you better dead. Like, think about it. When an artist dies, that's when they sell the most records. People that probably never even was really listening to them that much will go out and buy all their stuff. The record labels will make more money off of them. And sad to say, that's essentially what happened to Prince in some ways. I'm sure when he passed away, his record sales and streams or whatever probably, I don't think streaming was really that big when he died. It was getting to that point, but I'm pretty sure his record sales skyrocketed. I mean, look at what happened to Michael Jackson. I mean, when he died, his record sales skyrocketed. Tupac made more money dead than he did when he was alive. You know what I mean? So it's kind of sad, man, but it's true. People dig you better dead, and not just for celebrities. Even when regular people like ourselves pass away, a lot of times people that never even dealt with you or really liked you will come by and try to act like everything was all good and stuff like that, man. So it's something that you can apply to your regular life as well. Then it ends with Had You, with some people have kind of said it's sort of like a sequel to For You from his first album. Although this one is more sad because it's because of the whole situation with Warner Brothers. And this was his last album released on Warner Brothers while he was signed to the label. So this was like I guess like an angry letter ending everything. So oh yeah, and Rosie Gaines is on this album. She's on a lot of songs on this album, man. Probably like the closest thing to like Prince and Rosie Gaines actually doing like a collaboration album, which I think would have been awesome. But who knows? There may be one in the vault. But yeah, Chaos in Disorder, man. Don't listen to the reviews. Check out this album for yourselves, because I honestly think this is an underrated classic. Anybody that enjoyed Prince when he rocked out, I guarantee you're gonna dig this record, because it is wonderful. This is the closest you're gonna get to a Prince rock album right now. I don't know if he had other projects in the vault that lean way more towards rock music as well, but man, he really did his thing on this record, man. And I enjoy it so much, man. And it's just awesome. I want to point out one thing. This is like the vinyl to 1999. If you look closely at that teardrop, it has the Warner Brothers logo in it. You may not can see it that good here, but and of course it has that footprint where he's stepping on it. This was basically like Prince like killing that era of his killing. That was basically like him stomping on the past Prince. This is like him moving into another direction. But a great record nonetheless, man. Definitely one that needs to be talked about more, man, because it's really good. It's really good, man. And that's it for my top 5 Prince albums of the 1990s. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you're watching this video, let me know what you think. Leave a comment in the comment section. Tell me what would be your top 5 Prince albums of the 90s. Let me know if you agree or disagree with my list. I mean, I don't think it really matters because it's my list, but still, what? Just disregard that. Just leave a comment and tell me what your top 5 Prince albums of the 90s would be. You know what I'm saying? And I hope you guys enjoyed this video, man. I really had fun doing this video because, I really enjoy the 90s era of Prince because I think it's the most underrated. A lot of people don't give it a lot of recognition. It got overshadowed by the whole Warner Brothers dispute when he really was putting out some really good material. Even the albums that he never necessarily got behind, he was still putting out great material. And I want to point out that also during this era, he wasn't putting out any new music. He refused to put out any new music. A lot of these songs, most of these songs were songs that were like in the vaults that he recorded. I think the Love Symbol album might have been the last album of new material he put out, or it might have been Diamonds and Pearls, because you have to understand that Prince was working on an album called The Don, a triple set album called The Don, that he presented to Warner Brothers, which they refused, which was what really started this whole thing. And so I don't know. It might have been Diamonds and Pearls, but because I think the Love Symbol album was technically the first album to really kick off the slave era. But I don't know, man. If most of you in the Prince community, y'all can leave a comment and correct me if I'm wrong and give me the correct version. But I know that after the Love Symbol album, none of those songs were newly recorded songs. Those were songs that Prince had in the vault and stuff of that nature, man. So check out these albums if you never really heard of them or you never even given them a chance. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, hope you all have a blessed day and a blessed week. And always remember, love, peace, and music. Peace out.